Welcome to the Abilene City Commission regular meeting for June 8th, 2020, and due to COVID-19 and social distancing, we're encouraging viewing all meetings virtually on the live streamed City of Abilene's YouTube page. Roll call.
Mayor Osterman?
Here.
Commissioner Ryan?
Here.
Commissioner Marshall? Here. Commissioner Schaefer?
Here.
Commissioner Witt?
Here.
Roll call's complete.
Thank you. We will now do the Pledge of Allegiance. Next item is Mr. Martin, our city attorney, would like to make an announcement.
Thank you, Mayor Osterman and Commissioners. I wanted to briefly just mention that we are still technically operating under the Emergency Kansas Open Meetings Act provisions by encouraging people to view from home. And because of that, and because this is our first meeting with an executive session under that framework, we are required to state at the outset of the meeting the procedure that we will use to recess into an executive session. And in this case, when the time comes on the agenda, towards the tail end of the agenda, to recess into an executive session, a motion will be made and seconded, presumably, and if approved, all the commissioners will go into the other room, I believe, and convene in that closed session, and then come back out to the open meeting. And the practical implication of that is that anyone watching from home will see a set of empty chairs, presumably, and will not hear audio of that discussion, and that is very intentional. And lastly, because we still are operating under that framework, everyone is required to state their name before they speak or before they vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Consent agenda.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I move that the City Commission, Commissioner Marshall, I move that the City Commission approve the consent agenda with the addition of a second executive session following the first executive session, which is supposed to be number 13. This will be number 14, for the purpose of discussing the status of a specific city employee based upon the need to discuss personnel matters of non-elected personnel.
This is Commissioner Witt. I second the motion.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda with the addendum of number 13, which was already on the agenda, and the addition of number 14, the second executive session. We'll have roll call vote. Commissioner Ryan.
Yes.
Commissioner Marshall.
Yes.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Yes.
Commissioner Witt.
Yes.
Mayor Osterman. Yes. It has been so approved. Next item is public comments and communications. Persons who wish to address the City Commission may do so when called upon the mayor. Do I have anyone that would like to make any comments at this time? Okay. We will look to number 9, resolution number 060820-2. And this is regards to the financial statement. And Marcus, is that, or do we, go ahead, Jane.
We're going to have April Schwartz from our auditing firm to address this, please.
Thank you.
It's really nice to see people.
Yeah.
This is like the second outing since the COVID hit, and so we're here to present the audit. We apologize that we had to have a revised copy. I would like to blame that on COVID-19, but since the error happened in 2017, I don't think that would fly. When you refunded the bond in 2017, we missed the fact that it was a refunding bond and did not remove the 9 and 10 bonds from your debt schedule. And what further confuses that is the state of Kansas continues to confirm payments on those bonds. And so we did not discover it until this year when we did discover the PBC bond had been refunded. In the past, it had been on there as 2 issues, and this year we combined it because we did discover that that had been refunded. But had we dug a little deeper, we might have figured out the 17 was also a refunding issue. The financial statements themselves that you received in 17, 18, and 19 were correct. So nothing changed on the fund statements. The only thing that was incorrect were the footnotes that show the breakout of the debt outstanding. So although those bonds were still outstanding, they were not owed by the city of Abilene because you had placed money in reserves to pay those, and those were the payments the state had been confirming to us. So with that being said, we'll talk about the financial statement and the letter. The letter is called our required communications letter. And initially, what essentially this letter does is points out any issues or findings that we have in the audit. And I will say that we had no findings or issues in regard to the audit. There were no material adjustments that were required to be made to make your financial statements correct. So the information you received from Marcus throughout 2019 for financial statements were correct, no changes. We do have one comment toward the end of the letter regarding your software. Since the inception of your software, there have been issues. A lot of things have to be cleaned up at year end each time due to the fact that your accounts payable module does not really operate as it should. And so it also creates extra work on your city staff. And I'm sure you've talked about this multiple times, but we always like to point it out. We know no one likes to change software. You just changed about 5 years ago, but we just don't really feel the software is giving you what you need to be effective and allow Marcus and his staff to spend their time doing the important things. So we always want to mention those types of things. One of the things about software you find is they'll sell you a software, and it may be a really good software, but if they don't understand the state of Kansas and the regulatory method of accounting, then there's no way their software can work because they have accounts receivable. You never have accounts receivable when you operate on a KMAG basis like you do. You're basically operating on a cash basis with the exception of accounts payable and encumbrances. So it's just not set up, and even though we helped you clean it up after that first year, it continues to record some things in accounts receivable accounts that truly aren't, that have to be reclassed, and it also does not clear out and handle your AP correctly at year end. And Marcus, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, or?
Well, for the mic, I'd have to actually walk up to the mic, but that's I have to speak pretty close to the mic, but yeah, I think at this point we've had our challenges, and the time the city staff each year has kind of gone back on this, and one of the things that held us back is we know how much work went into the initial conversion, and that was actually right at the time when we were switching auditors and Barney was coming on, and so that's something that speaking with April I think would be very helpful, as we transitioned into a new software, that at some point, being able to have that assistance and have, our auditors on board and who know the issues and be able to help us with that transition. I think it could really help clean things up and make us be able to present to the commission faster, provide better information out to the community when needed, and just help us clean everything up. So.
Yeah, and our function there, obviously we can't do management type functions with an audit client, but what we can do is once the data's been moved over to the new software, we can verify that starting balances agree with what they should and that they're in the right accounts and the right funds. We did help Chapman when they converted their software, and it was about the same time that Abilene did theirs. And the transition time was strange with this because we were the new auditors, and I think you were hesitant to ask the old auditors because you were moving, and then maybe weren't sure about asking. And I think Marcus was fairly new at the time as well. So, yeah, 2 weeks. Okay, been here 2 weeks. So that would be something. Our audit contract is up this year, and so we're hoping you'll consider renewing with us again. But that is something we would include in our audit fee. We wouldn't charge extra for that. We realistically could keep your fee the same as it's been for the past 5 years. And we provide a year-round service with our audit contract. So if he calls with questions or help, or you need help, verifying balances, all of that's part of your audit fee. So there would be no additional charge for that. So we'll just put that out there. Obviously, that's something for you to decide whether you'll go out for bids or whether you would accept another proposal from our firm. But either way, just let us know how you'd like to proceed. So that's the issue on the letter. As far as the financial statements go, like I said, no adjustments were made from Marcus's numbers. So if you'll turn to pages 3 and 4, On a regulatory basis, the financial statement, which is what the city of Abilene uses, this is basically a snapshot of what occurred in your city during 2019. On the left-hand side are all the funds listed, starting with your general fund, and then all the other funds that the city of Abilene has. We show your beginning balance of cash in those funds. We add your receipts. We deduct your expenditures to come to your unencumbered cash, which is what you have remaining in each fund for next year's to ongoing purposes. Then we add back any accounts payable or encumbrances to come to your balance per bank at the end of the year. And if you'll turn to page 4, you can see that the city had a total of $8,894,000 in the bank at the end of the year for 2019. You started the year with $6 million, but remember, you did get a bond issue in 2019, so your cash is inflated because you have not expended all of those bond proceeds at the end of 19. There were no cash violations and there were no budget violations noted in the financial statements. The next several pages are simply the notes to the financials, and I will not go through those in detail, but let's go look at page 10, which is your debt summary. So page 10 lists at the top all of your GO bonds, starting with your Series 2011, and shows payments made during the year and interest paid on each of those bond issues. And then you'll notice the 2 new bond issues in 2019 that were issued, one for $2.7 million and one for $3.9 million, one of which was used to pay off your KDHE water treatment plant loan. So those are your new debt issues for the year. And then down below, you'll see that you also have some leases that sometimes you pay ahead on, sometimes you pay according to the amortization schedule, but these were the balances of the leases as of the end of 2019. Page 11 gives you the payout on that debt, gives you the maturity, so that you as a governing body, when you're doing your budgeting, you know how much principal and interest you'll have to pay each year on each of these debt issues throughout payment of the bonds and the leases as well. Page 11 is the principal. Page 12 gives you the interest that will be paid each year. Then if you'll skip on back to page number 16, 16 starts the individual fund statements. And since we had to make a change to the debt schedule, we went ahead and made some changes on the budget lineups on your fund statements. A lot of times when you report on a financial statement, you report in different line items than maybe what you're budgeting on your state budget form. So Marcus and Jane went through and found some items that they wanted to line up a little better, especially on the expenditure side, so that it matched better. You weren't seeing a large budget for a small item, which really was a budget for several items. We've combined those items now so it's more comparable. And that's something we can continue to refine as we go forward. If you make a change on your budget document, we can definitely change how we group the accounts to pull it into the line item to match your budget. So page 16 is the revenue of the general fund. I just want to give you a little overview of how this works. You'll have your prior year actual, then you have your current year actual versus budget and any variance. That's your general fund receipts. And then if you turn the page, the next several pages are the general fund, because there are multiple departments in the general fund. This breaks it out by department and also gives you prior year, current year actual versus budget. And then all of the rest of the pages in the audited financials are the other individual funds, each individually stated. Any questions on that?
I know on the inspection one, I thought I would bring that up because there's no budget listed under 2019. And at the time, the city manager at the time wanted to combine the community development and inspection. And then we have broken those back out. So those two had been combined in the past, and now we've broken those back out so they're separated so you can just see inspection. But it looks a little odd that there's no budget in there for inspection, but that was just kind of part of that plan that year. So.
And the budget law applies to a fund in total. So in your general fund, you can be over and under in your departments against a budget, and that's not a violation. But it's the total expenditures by fund compared to the total published budget. So if there are no further questions, then that would be my presentation.
Well,
And again,
yes, I have a quick question.
Okay.
Why would a software company sell to any city in a state if they can't accommodate the state's rules and regulations.
They're trying to sell a product, and if they can get someone to buy it. There are not a ton of softwares that know Kansas or that are, specifically sold mainly in Kansas. So for one, for example, is CIC, which the county uses. That is a software that is sold to a lot of Kansas counties and cities. But these others, like Infinitech and Data Technologies, a lot of those, they sell nationwide. And so they are not as familiar with the Kansas laws. The other area they struggle in is on payroll, in understanding CAPERS and KP&F and how those things have to be set up in order for those paychecks to be correct. So I don't think there's a law that says they can't sell it, but, they can talk a good story. And if you don't know the right questions to ask,
Okay, I'm just curious.
Well, we kind of cheaped out the last time.
Yeah, that's probably part of it too. Okay?
And that is a case where when we reviewed all those, and even the CIC, that was one, that's just tape, that we did look at, and there is a very broad price range in all of these. And at the time we were, speaking to the salesman, he did say that, they would be able to accommodate all of these things, and at a price that, now looking at it, sometimes that price is something that you really need to open your eyes to, because it was significantly less than the others that we were quoted. And so at the time, if they can accommodate everything that the other softwares are saying they can, then sometimes you think, well, why not go for this price? Because I think ours was listed at somewhere around $33,000 for the initial setup, and it's about $5,000 to $6,000 per year after that. And some of the other quotes that we received were anywhere from $75,000 to $125,000 for the initial setup, and it was going to be anywhere from $5,000 to $30,000 per year. So it could be significant annual increase and initial setup increase. And so at the time, it seemed like they were going to be able to handle everything. And we found out that after the setup that we were the largest city that they had taken on, and so I think they were used to smaller cities, and that wasn't really shared with us up front. So.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
Commissioner Marshall, this is one thing I really champion is software. I mean, I was so glad to see that we started putting money back. We need to do our research, make sure we buy right this time, and get something that does the job for all of the city staff, not just Marcus, just make life easier and know that reporting's correct without having to go back and clean up.
all right, thank you.
Thanks, April. Okay. Motion.
Madam Mayor, I move we approve resolution number 060820-2, resolution accepting the independent audit of the financial statements of the City of Abilene, Kansas for year ending December 31st, 2019, as prepared by Varney & Associates, CPAs, LLC.
Commissioner Marshall, I will second his motion.
Thank you. It has been moved by Commissioner Ryan and seconded by Commissioner Marshall to approve resolution number 060820-2. Do I have any further discussion? We will go to hand vote. Oh, sorry, we will go back to voice since we're doing this. Commissioner Marshall,
Yes.
Commissioner Schaefer,
Yes.
Commissioner Witt,
Yes.
Mayor Osterman, yes. Commissioner Ryan.
Yes.
Thank you. Next item, resolution number 060820-3, and that is City Manager Foltz.
Thank you, Mayor. This is Jane Foltz, City Manager. And before you, we discussed last Monday at our study session our proposed capital improvement plan 2021. And I think most people in the community saw this in the newspaper. They did a very nice job listing all the different areas. Our capital improvement projects include storm drainage project, the water line project, the sewer reline and rehab, the city building remodel, street preservation, Rogers Street improvements, and the Buckeye Avenue KDOT C-CLIP for a total of approximately $1,539,000. Then we've got our proposed equipment reserve purchases. Those are listed for a total of $306,840. And our proposed water equipment purchases, including some of the work with the 2019 water bond issue, for a total of $298,000. And again, as I stated last Monday, this improvement plan is proposed, and if the monies are not there, we will then shorten this list. But I think it's really intentional to have a plan in place. And if you have any questions, staff is here to answer those.
Do I have anyone that would like to ask staff regarding that resolution?
This is Commissioner Witt. I just wanted to make a clarifying thing to some of my comments I brought up during the study session about the elevator. I'm excited about this capital improvement plan. What I was trying to say last week was that acknowledging that we do have that elevator, it's just pretty small. And just thinking ahead to once the police department's at that second story, we're going to see more traffic go into that second story. And so just thinking ahead of to people in wheelchairs or scooters or moms with kids in strollers, I think there may be eventually enough demand to justify the expense of a larger elevator at some point. But so yeah, I just wanted to clarify seeing that. But yeah, I'm excited about what's in this capital improvement plan.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, Commissioner Marshall, I move that we approve Resolution 060820-3 for the proposed capital improvement plan for the city of Abilene, Kansas.
This is Commissioner Witt. I second the motion.
It's been moved by Commissioner Marshall and second by Commissioner Witt to approve resolution number 060820-3. Any further discussion? We will go to roll call vote. Commissioner Schaefer,
Yes.
Commissioner Witt,
Yes.
Mayor Osterman, yes. Commissioner Ryan,
Yes.
and Commissioner Marshall.
Yes.
Next item is the public hearing. City Manager Foltz, should I be opening this up to a public hearing? Is that correct?
I think that would be correct.
And this is Aaron Martin, City Attorney. That is correct. So this is the public hearing, as we mentioned at the study session. Staff is taking care of all the requisite notices to the various interested parties, and today is the public hearing at which Mr. Stearman will present his basis for determining that the property is unsafe and dangerous. And any other interested party is afforded an opportunity to rebut that or make a statement related to Mr. Stearman's findings. We will then close the public hearing and consider the resolution if you wish to do so, which would then set the dates and order the property owner to make the repairs or demolish the property by a certain date.
Thank you. We will now open the public hearing for resolution number 060820-4. Yes.
Everybody hear me? Okay. This is Travis Stearman, City Inspector. I bring this property to the City Commission. Just to recap, the letter for this property case kind of started in January 16th of 2018. I started in 2017, and it was one of the very first properties that staff took me to and was a problem. From then, a letter started January 16th, 2018. Then there was another letter in August 22nd of 2018, and that had to do with a nuisance. It was trash and stuff in the backyard. And then there was another letter in January 16th of 2019, and that was addressing that a building permit needed to be filed and to start work on the property. And then in February 7th of this year, we did a notice to inspect. And that's when we found that the house has been vacant. There had been remodel work of the dwelling has taken place before 2019, but after the permit was applied for, there was no work that was witnessed done at the property. The remodel work of the home would be very cost extensive. And then all nuisance and weed violations that have been issued to the property since 2017 have been addressed without city abatement or citation. And the county taxes on the property has been paid in full. I don't know if everybody has my staff report in place or remembers all the stuff that was wrong with it. If I need to, I can go back through the list of that.
It's in the report. You might hit the highlights
Okay.
for the public.
The first fire damage was from 1999. And then the second fire damage was in December of 2018. With the 2018 fire, that was in the front part of the home. That was where the roof underlayment was fire damaged. Some rafters were fire damaged. In the back of the 99 fire is where there's still insulation and smoke, and it has water damage. Adjacent rooms to inside the home had very, very many places where it was heavily smoke damaged. Some of the windows are missing or boarded up. Plaster has been removed in various areas. The electrical wiring is insufficient and in need of repair. The kitchen area is unfinished, and siding is missing and melted in rear and sides of the home.
Excuse me, Travis, you said there'd been some remodeling going on?
There had been before my permit had been
Okay.
issued.
So,
As
quite a
far
while.
as I don't know of what remodeling took place other than them taking stuff out.
Okay.
Of like, taking off the surface of the walls and plaster and stuff like that. I don't know what the home looked like then, but you can tell there was work done.
Okay,
to it.
thank you.
Any other questions? I do believe Rosalie wants to speak on behalf of her property. This is Travis Stearman again. One thing I wanted to make sure, Rosalie's been nothing but cordial through the whole time of this. She's been really good about this. I just wanted to let everybody know that.
Hi, this is Chris Osterman, Mayor. Can you give us your name and your address, please?
Rosalie Cornelius, 111 North Chestnut, Solomon, Kansas. The house has been abused, I admit that. My son had it and let a young man move in, and he was going to fix it up and take it over and buy it. That fell through. There was a lot of people in and out of the house, but I feel that the house is very, very solid. It needs a lot of TLC, and I'm willing to give it that TLC. There are windows in the house that needs to be put in. I want to re-side it, finish up the siding on it. But I would like to have a chance to bring the house up to something that the city would be proud of. So one reason things didn't get done last year is because after my son got this young man out, he went to Texas to move his brother to Florida. And on the way from Texas to Florida, he had a motorcycle accident. And we just thankful that he's alive. So he will be coming back, and if you give me the opportunity to redo the house, he will be here to redo it. And is there any questions or anything that, I'm very nervous. I've never done this before, and so my son did sign the house over to me because of everything that was going on, and so I do have control of the house now. And yes, we did get letters from the backyard. People had brought stuff in. We cleaned it up each time, and I did get the inside of it cleaned up. I do have my kitchen cabinets already. I have the heating and air conditioning units that we've already purchased. And like I said earlier, there are windows in the house that needs to be installed when the siding goes on. So there has been things done on it, but I admit not a lot, but I want to change that in the future. So is there any question?
Yes, I have a question. You have funding already?
Do what?
Do you have funding already to able to?
Do I have funding? Not yet, no. My daughter has said that she will help me, but we haven't proceeded with any of that, not knowing what the city is going to decide.
Commissioner Schaefer, how's your son doing? Is he okay?
He is. He's down there doing some work now, but yes, he is. Thank you for
Okay.
asking. Yeah.
Sure. And he will be coming back here?
Yes, he will be later this year, yes. My husband and I bought a house in Solomon, and when we bought it, it also needed some TLC. And you're all welcome to come by and see it. I should have brought pictures. But, you know, I love old houses, and I think they need to be given chances, so,
Okay, you said your son would be coming back
Yes.
later this year.
yes.
When would that be?
I don't have a date at this time, but probably I'm hoping about 3 more months that he'll be back.
This
Thank you.
Commissioner Marshall, I'm sorry, I thought you were finished.
No, I just said thank you.
This Commissioner Marshall, what kind of time frame would you need to restore this house?
Well, with
If
him
your
not
son
being
comes
able to
back.
come back for probably a couple, can you hear me?
Yes.
A couple, 3 months, I would like 1.5 years on it. And that would also give us a chance for my daughter to help me to get financing available so that we can go in and get it done.
Do I have any further questions?
Commissioner Schaefer again.
Yes.
The yard is up to snuff?
Yes, that yard, can I say something on that?
Oh, sure.
I had people last summer that was supposed to be doing the yard, but it didn't fall through. They did not do what they were supposed to do, and so the yard got in bad shape. But I have a young man this summer that's really been very good, and he's been keeping up on it, so,
And I see city inspector nodding his head. Okay.
This Commissioner Marshall, question for City Inspector. What's the overall outside appearance look like at this time? Not just the yard, the whole thing. Does it still look about the same?
Yes, yes,
Oh,
it does.
okay.
This is Travis Stearman. Yes, it looks the same as it has since I started with the case in 2018.
What year did you start with it? 2010?
2018.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
Do I have anyone else that would like to make comments regarding Ms. Structure? The public hearing is now closed. And do I have any further conversation or questions from the city commissioners?
This is Commissioner Ryan. I guess with the longer timetable that you were requesting to finish the entire home, I was kind of curious if there'd be any way that you could maybe get the outside, the siding and the windows finished in a more timely manner, maybe in the next 2 to 3 months. That way it protects the inside and it removes it as an eyesore for the city. I think if that were the case, if that were correct in the next 2 to 3 months, I would be willing to give the time to finish the inside and all that, because it has no, effect on any other citizen, so.
Well, I will say, the house is, I feel it's very solid, and this is, go ahead, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Probably need to
Yeah,
come to
if
the
you wanna
mic.
come back up.
Come up, Mike. We do have things boarded up now, so things can't get in. But I was amazed that I don't have mice problems, because so many times when older houses set like that, you do have problems with mice, and I've not had that. So I know that, to me, tells it that the house is a solid house, so.
This is Commissioner Marshall. I don't think you spoke to the item that Commissioner Ryan asked. Could you,
Okay, I'm sorry. He asked about the outside.
could you
of
get
getting
the
it done.
outside up to snuff within a 2 or 3?
Okay. We can sure give it a try. Yes, I can. I can get a hold of my daughter and we can talk things over and see what we can do. Because that is a pricey thing, but yes. And you're right. It does need to be done first, before you do the inside. I understand that, so.
This is Commissioner Marshall again. I don't think I will try is a good enough answer. This property's been going on for several years now. It's either 2 or 3 months, the outside looks appropriate or not. I mean,
I'm sorry.
it needs to be done. I don't think we can just have an open time frame saying, I will try. I think it needs to be a guarantee.
I need to talk to my daughter to give you a actual 100% guarantee, because she's the one that was going to help me finance it. So, like I said, I didn't want to go in and borrow money if the city wasn't going to let me fix it up. So, after today, if you do decide to let me, then I'll get a hold of my daughter and we will get started on financing on it. And yes, that would be the very first thing that we would do, would be the outside. So, because if you don't do your outside, it's not going to do any good to do that inside, because it won't stay, And I understand completely what you're saying. So,
And this is Mayor Osterman. My concern is for the neighborhood and for the neighbors that live next to that, because for their own protection, and, they don't, it's hard for them to, of course, there's no one here right now, but for anyone would want to live in a neighborhood that at least it's taken care of. So that's a concern.
This is Commissioner Witt. And so what we have before us to vote on here today is basically lays out 2 different dates. One is a work shall be started by date, and then a work shall be completed. And so from the sound of the conversation, it seems right now those are set for the work should be started by June 30th and then completed by August 31st. And as you've talked, you need a little bit more extended timeline, but what we have before us would kind of set the next step in the process of just making sure all parties are accountable to it. And so it sounds like we could start this, maybe push that start date maybe to September 1st or something like that, but still having this completion date in there at a later time, maybe even into next year. But, so that way that keeps the accountability of taking care of the outside of it by a certain time, and then if that doesn't happen, and then the forces of what's before us would start. So is that, my understanding of it correct, Mr. Martin?
Yes, Commissioner Witt, this is Aaron Martin. And as Commissioner Witt noted, if there is a finding by the City Commission that the property is in fact dangerous and unsafe, the three variables, if you will, or there's two variables and one overarching requirement. The two variables are commenced by a date established by the City Commission. We've defined what commence means, and it means to apply for the building permits and to undertake construction. And then the completion date. What you have before you in the resolution is staff's recommended dates based on information available at the time this resolution was prepared. There's an overarching requirement under state law that made its way into the ordinance that once work starts, it is diligently prosecuted. And that means once work starts, we don't have prolonged periods where no one is working at the property, leaving people thinking that maybe work is stopped permanently. And so you have complete flexibility with the commencement date and the completion date. I recommend that we stick to that. Once work has started, it continue to be diligently prosecuted. That is going to be a fact-specific inquiry. Difficult for me to define what that means for a particular case. One thing I would mention, if it were appealing to you, would be that whatever dates you choose, we could add a requirement today that before any action is taken on that outer date, if it's not truly completed by that date, the owner could be compelled to come back for a show cause hearing to explain why it is not completed. And at that point, you could analyze, okay, what has been done, what efforts were made, and is there a good reason that work was not completed in accordance with our expectations? So that show cause hearing at the back end of it, after the date that you set, is just an option. I'm not suggesting you should do that, but it's another tool that you could consider using.
Mr. Martin, my problem with all this, we keep on talking about funding, and I don't, from what I'm hearing, funding is a slow process. So even the funding could be 60 days before she gets through that process. Am I out of line on that? But, because I'm hearing things are slowed down a lot since the COV-19. So we have to think about, applying for the funding, and then we have to give the time for including the repair in a reasonable amount of time. So that's where I'm coming from. I know you said you were going to have talk to your daughter to apply for the funding, but that process could take a while. So that's one of my concerns.
As Commissioner Marshall, I would think even with COVID-19, in a month's time, you would know whether or not you had your funding. So if we just move everything up 45 days, that gives her the time to get her funding and go from there if we choose to go that way.
Okay, all right. Does anybody else have?
That should be plenty. You're a banker, better enough?
Is that about 45 days to find out if she can get the funding?
It's Commissioner Ryan. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Okay.
This is Commissioner Ryan. Ma'am, were you talking about applying with your daughter for funding, or were you going to get some funds from her to start the process?
At this point, we was going to go in together.
Okay.
And she was going to co-sign for me and help me get the funding together so that we can go in and do the house the way it needs to be done.
Okay.
Okay?
And then I guess this is kind of a question for Travis and Aaron. With that ordinance, is there any way that, this is just kind of my thought on it, maybe separate it with getting the siding and windows finished so that way the outside of the home is secured and is not an eyesore for the community? Maybe have that commence by July 30th and then give either 2 or 3 months, whatever we wish to do, and then separate that from the inside, because July, August, September, October, your son may or may not be back to start work on the inside. And I think the biggest problem with at least the surrounding neighborhood is just the exterior appearance of the home. So I think if we could separate that and get that corrected first, that would also give us a show of good faith that you are serious about getting this finished and getting it taken care
I am
of.
serious about it. I really am. I wouldn't be here today if I wasn't, so.
This is Commissioner Marshall again. I've got a question for our attorney. Looks like all of this is contingent upon her getting financing. If we set up dates, can we have a date in there for her to report back whether or not she received funding?
This is Aaron Martin, City Attorney. First, to Commissioner Ryan, yes, it would be appropriate to have milestones if you wish to establish milestones for various phases of the project. And Commissioner Marshall, to your question, the definition of commencement is something that we can tweak here in the resolution. I would note that in all cases, a building permit is really an official thing that needs to happen before work can legally commence within the city of Abilene. So in all cases, I think that's an appropriate benchmark to assess whether one has plans to proceed. Because without a building permit, and I'll look to Mr. Stearman to correct me if I'm wrong on that, but most of these items on here could not proceed legally. And so if you wish to establish an even earlier date related strictly to financing, that would be appropriate. But ultimately, I think the city's interest is that a building permit be lawfully issued and that work be undertaken, commenced, and diligently prosecuted until it's done.
Okay, what I was saying, though, all of this is moot if she doesn't get the money. And people do apply for building permits and nothing happens, right? It does happen. I mean, a building permit says you want to go ahead with the work, but then something happens. But there's no sense even talking about this if she doesn't get financing. So it would seem appropriate to me that she report back whether or not she can go ahead, whether or not she can get the money.
Yes, I understand your point, and I agree that without financing, the project couldn't move forward. So that would be the earliest potential item that could assess whether the project can legitimately move forward. As we sit here and talk about it, I do not know off the top of my head how we would articulate that standard in terms of a dollar amount or how much it would cost. But that would be an appropriate thing to do if you can find a way that you're comfortable stating that
Just
standard.
appropriate. I don't think we need a dollar amount. I mean,
Sure.
You never know what it's going to cost. I know that. I don't know, it just seems like this is all an exercise in futility if she doesn't get the money.
Well, I'm not really concerned and worried about the funding of it because I know my daughter's financial situation, and there would be no problems there with her, and I know that for an absolute fact.
Okay,
So,
all right, thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I move that we take Commissioner Ryan's model and adopt the resolution reading that the building permit must be issued by July 31st, 2020, with exterior work completed by September 30th, 2020. And upon completion of the exterior work, the interior work must be completed by December 31, 2021.
Excuse me, I missed part of it. Do you want the building permit 7/31? What was your next date?
I can't hear you.
Okay. Your first part said building permit by July 31st.
Yes,
Then you had a second date in there before it, work commencing when?
after the building permit's issued, and the work must be completed by September 30th.
September 30th. Okay, thank you.
On the outside, on the
Yes,
exterior.
To the exterior. All right. Now that I understand it, I will second Commissioner Schaefer's motion, this Commissioner Marshall.
Okay. Thank you. It's been moved and second to have the resolution number 060820-4 that by July 31st, all permits will be applied for. September 30th, a July 31st of 2020, September 30th of 2020, all the outside work will be completed, and the interior will be completed by December 31st, 2021. Do I have any further discussion?
Just a note of clarification. We've had issues before, and I'm not trying to diminish your word at all, but we've had people come before and they actually spent some money and then, but didn't finish.
Right.
So just be aware that if this gives you the time you've asked for,
Yes, it is.
but if you spend $10,000 on that building and you violate these dates, it's not going to work.
I understand that, sir, and
Okay.
I really appreciate you trying to work with me on this, and I already have some things invested in it already. Like I said, I had the kitchen cabinets, and I do have the heating and air conditioning units, so I do have money already invested, and I can see the house finished. I have a vision, you know, and like I said, my husband was, well, I didn't say this, but my husband was in construction, and I understand a lot of the stuff that goes on because I worked with him. And we did remodel the house in Abilene. And so, you know, I'm familiar with a lot of this stuff, and I appreciate what you're saying. So,
Good luck.
thank you.
Okay.
Mayor Osterman, this is Aaron Martin. Just
Yes.
briefly, this may have been mentioned in the motion, but I wanted to confirm on the first phase of the exterior work, wanted to make sure we didn't have any uncertainty as to which items that included. And am I correct in understanding, this is more of a clarification, and is it all items that are visible from the exterior that are on this list?
That would be my intent.
And I think,
And this is Commissioner Ryan. That was my original intent as well.
is that all right?
That confirms,
That confirms.
if we intended something different, I wanted to make sure that was.
And Travis, does that give you enough direction?
This is Travis Stearman, City Inspector. I'm here for the city of Abilene, so whatever decision's made.
Well, this may or may not be the decision, but if it is the decision, does that give you enough direction?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We will go with the roll call vote. Commissioner Witt?
Yes.
Mayor Osterman? Yes. Commissioner Ryan?
Yes.
Commissioner Marshall?
Yes.
Commissioner Schaefer?
Yes.
Thank you. It has been so approved. Next item, consider approval of the Vine Street project bids. City Manager Folks.
Thank you, Mayor. I did ask Lon Schrader to come in and just reiterate what he talked to you all about last Monday on the Vine Street sidewalk project. So I'll let him go to the microphone.
This is Public Works Director Schrader. Won't take a lot of your time here. What I did not mention before in this particular project is that we advertise these as we always do to the public, but we also contact, mail, and email invitations directly to contractors of this type of work, and that's a standard practice. So I did look on this. We invited 7 different contractors to bid on this project. And I had conversations with several of them and some that I did not. And obviously there are some we're more familiar with. Most of those who did not bid on it that I talked to were just simply already had work scheduled. This, because of the Pathways grant, needs to be completed by July 31st. So I did put that time frame in the scope of work and the specifications, and I'm certain that that probably has some bearing on contractors bidding on it as well. Again, though, we were very happy with the bid. And of course, it's a company that we're familiar working with, T&M Concrete Construction. Submitted the one bid. They have, I think part of the reason that they would target something like this is because they will already be in Abilene, probably working, as they will be doing all of the surface work that you will see out on the 8th Street project. So they will already be mobilized, and certainly that'll be a benefit to us. So with that, entertain if you have any other questions. And,
Not at this time, but it's a project that needs to be done, so thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Madam Mayor, I move we approve the bid from T&M Concrete Construction Company for the Vine Street project.
I will second his motion, Commissioner Marshall.
It's been moved and second to approve the Vine Street project bid. Is there any further discussion? Roll call vote. Commissioner Witt?
Yes.
Commissioner Schaefer?
Yes.
Commissioner Marshall?
Yes.
Mayor Osterman? Yes. Commissioner Ryan?
Yes.
Been so approved. Okay. Next item.
Madam Mayor, I
Yes.
move that we go into the City Commission recess into executive session for 20 minutes to review and evaluate the city manager's performance based upon the need to discuss personnel matters of non-elected personnel pursuant to KSA 75-4319B1. The open, we want to include the commission and the attorney, and the open meeting will resume in this room at 5:33.
5:33. Okay. It's been moved. Do I have a second?
Madam Mayor, this is Commissioner Witt. I second the motion.
Okay. It's been moved and second to go into executive session. Commissioner Commissioner Schaefer,
Yes.
Commissioner Marshall,
Yes.
Mayor Osterman, yes. Commissioner Ryan,
Yes.
Commissioner Witt.
Yes.
You're going in there.
good for me, yeah. I got layers on.
Returning from the executive session, no action is taken at this time. Mr. Martin, would you like to?
Sure, I would be happy to speak to what I think public action would be. And just as background, Ms. Foltz's contract anticipated a review in July. And so we've had that preliminary discussion in there to talk about preliminary review. But as I told the commissioners, I believe the process for the review is something that has to happen and be discussed publicly. And so I would suggest at a future meeting, public meeting, be it a study session or a regular business meeting, we have an item on the agenda so that the commissioners can discuss publicly the form of the review and the process to be utilized. And then after that is approved, the review process can be implemented. And the results, of course, can then be kept confidential and discussed in another executive session.
Thank you. Next item is executive session.
Madam Mayor, I move the city commission. Whoa. I may have just gotten the wrong one. I got it. I move the city commission recess into executive session for 15 minutes to discuss the status of a specific city employee based upon the need to discuss personnel matters of non-elected personnel pursuant to KSA 75-4319B1. The open meeting will resume in this room at 5:49 p.m.
This Commissioner Marshall, I'll second his motion.
It's been moved and second to move, that the city commission recesses into an executive session for 15 minutes to discuss the status of a specific city employee based upon the need to discuss personnel matters of non-elected personnel pursuant to KSA 754319B1. Roll call vote. Commissioner Schaefer.
Yes.
Commissioner Marshall.
Yes.
Mayor Osterman. Yes. Commissioner Ryan.
Yes.
Commissioner Witt.
Yes.
Getting as much exercise walking in there as I do mowing lawns.
You're right. Mark Carter.
sit over on this side.
Tim, I can just adjust it.
The mics are hot.
We are returning from the executive session. Next item, City Manager Foltz, reports.
Thank you, Mayor. So, as many of you know, we were the recipients of the CDBG CV grant for $132,000 for small owner-operated businesses during this pandemic. And so, next week, Monday, Julie did an outstanding job on that, but now we have paperwork. And so we will be bringing that contract to you all to look at. And one thing we're not going to do is fast track this. Julie is taking a list of owners who are interested in receiving some of these dollars, and there will be a review, and we don't have to do this quickly. So again, I want to acknowledge her great work on this and her pushing the City Commission to get that going. And there were how many? 170 applicants that got in on this first wave, with only 66 getting that. So that was a great win for the City of Abilene small businesses. Also, don't forget to vote for Abilene, one of the best historic small towns as named by USA Today. Check the city website for the easy access, abilenekansas.org/vote now. And we get to vote till June 28th, 2020. Also, wanted to announce that there are 2 openings on the Planning Commission and also an opening on the Airport Advisory Board. We would like for Abilene residents to fill those vacancies, and the application can be found on our website. Also today, we were notified that the county would be doing work on Washington Street. They are trying out their new asphalt overlay machine between 8th Street and Old 40. And I think Commissioner Schaefer, you ran into that road work coming this way. So we're glad to see that happening. The rec center and the senior center are opened. Today they opened, and they are logging, just as we are here, all who are entering as part of that contact tracing. Kelly said it was pretty quiet. People are just starting to move around. And then the pool opens on June 15th with swimming lessons beginning June 29th. And there have been some changes in how we do business there as well, following the guidelines of KRPA and CDC. And just as a reminder to all the citizens, plans are underway for our 4th of July. There will not be a rocket run race this year, and there will not be any inflatables. But everything else we're going to try to pull together, all the mud volleyball, the sand volleyball, all those activities that the youth, the free swim at the pool from 1 to 5, and the fireworks are on schedule for July 4th evening. And then, as many of you may know or may not know, the Central Kansas Free Fair Rodeo Carnival Parade, those have all been canceled. The fair will be for immediate family and those 4-Hers who can finish up their projects. So, you know, when I know that County Administrator Brad Hammond, myself, John Hultgren, County EMS, and Dr. Holmes, our County Health Officer, were invited to sit and listen to the discussion, and it was a very hard decision for them, because they know the economic impact that this brings to our community. But knowing that we still have to social distance even after June 22nd, the impact of having that less people in the stands was just not financially feasible. So I know it was a very difficult decision for them, but understand we want to stay meeting in public like this and moving forward. So that's what I have. Thank you.
Okay. I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn, sorry. Commissioner Witt,
Yes.
Commissioner Schaefer,
Yes.
Commissioner Marshall,
Yes.
Mayor Osterman, yes. Commissioner Ryan.
Yes.